Welcome into Fantasy Keys to the Crown, presented by Crown Royal. I'm Erin Summers, joined by NFL Network's fantasy football guru, Marcas Grant. Marcas, it was absolute chaos this past week in the NFL. Things that you thought should happen did not happen, and the complete opposite happened. How do we even approach the waiver wires this week?
Well, I think the first thing you do is you keep an eye on some injuries, because there were a few notable injuries that happened this past week. David Montgomery for the Chicago Bears. He's sort of day-to-day. Khalil Herbert's going to be a very popular ad off the waiver wire. Dalvin Cook, who I know the Saints are going to play this week over in London. He suffered a shoulder injury, so Alexander Mattison is going to be a very popular name. So I think that's sort of the first thing there. But in terms of some of the other players, like Mac Hollins for the Raiders having a huge game, like nobody saw something like that coming. On the flip side, Justin Jefferson, who we all loved and drafted really high, has had two back-to-back really bad games there. So, I guess this is why we do this, right? Because if we knew what was going to happen every week, it wouldn't be nearly as fun, but definitely a frustrating, upsetting week for a lot of folks.
With that being said, is there anybody that you're definitely locked in on still at this point, a starter, somebody that we should definitely be playing?
Well, a lot of those guys at the top have been fine. Cooper Kupp has been amazing all year long. I'm excited about what I've seen out of Saquan Barkley. I've been using the phrase the Saquan-assance, because it's nice to see him sort of get back to where he has been. But it has been a little frustrating because I think a lot of the top running backs that we drafted have been underperforming. I mentioned the injury to Dalvin Cook, which has been a little bit frustrating as well. So I think if you have those guys that you drafted in the first couple of rounds and they're not performing the way you would like, for the most part, I think you could be okay. I think it's just about being patient. I think by the time we get to the middle of the season, the end of the season, I think a lot of those guys that we spent a lot of draft capital on are going to be all right.
Looking at the Saints matchup, they're in London. Nobody invited us, apparently, which is just rude. But they are playing the Vikings. It's going to be an early morning game for everybody here in the States. Who are your starts, sits, and maybe a sleeper in that one?
Well, I think, on the Vikings side, I think the stars you talk about, Justin Jefferson, I think he's going to be okay. Keep an eye on Dalvin Cook to see what he's going to do. If he doesn't play, then you can go to Alexander Mattison, and I think he's going to get a lot of opportunity. On the Saints side, the guy that I really loved, and I think we've talked about him before, is Chris Olave, the rookie out of Ohio State. And it looks like he and Jameis really have a good connection going. They like to use him down the field to get him open, get him some targets. So I think Chris Olave is a guy who has to be in lineups. Of course, Michael Thomas, you're going to start as well. So there, I think, are a lot of really interesting fantasy pieces in this London game.
Chris Olave is starting to gain some traction. He's rostered in a little over half of the leagues right now, so still available for a pickup. Marcas, thank you so much for joining me. This has been Keys to the Crown, presented by Crown Royal.